aqua friends. Today we are going to do some watermelons. As you can see, we are using a limited palette. I have leaf green, sap green, quinacridone scarlet, carmine, and indigo. We are going to work wet on dry and filling in the fleshy part of the watermelons. I am just following my sketch lines. So we are going to tease out that hard edge and just leave the white of the paper for the white of the watermelon. So with a damp brush, you just damp that edge so that it softens. You could pick up the color and dab it off on a piece of tissue or rag like I'm doing here. And I'm a little bit of a sloppy painter. Went outside the line there, just dab that off. Alright, so now I'm coming in with that carmine and adding in the darker spots that I see in the watermelon. With a damp brush, I am touching the paper to get the white parts of the watermelon, and this is called doing a controlled bloom. So my brush is damp. I am drawing in the lines that I see in the reference photo. And as you can see, it's a very, very soft effect. So you don't want a sopping wet brush, you just want a damp brush. Moving on to the second watermelon. Same thing, wet on dry, filling in my lines and just filling in the whole thing here with the quinacridone scarlet. Taking a damp brush, I am going to soften the edges. I'm adding in some more quinacridone scarlet on that edge. There is a lot of vibrancy there. My paper is starting to dry and it's not spreading well, so I decided to just repaint the whole thing. And you know, that happens sometimes. You have to, you know, plans don't go accordingly, and that was pretty much the only solution, so I didn't get hard lines. Now I'm drawing in the darker spots. And with a damp brush, I'm drawing in that controlled bloom of that light line. There's like a half moon in the reference photo that I drew in with a damp brush, and it leaves that light area. Moving on to the third one, same technique. Teasing out that line. This one dried on me very quickly, and I'm actually having a hard time teasing out that line, so I had to add another bit of the quinacridone scarlet to get it more wet. Okay, in order to get a nice soft transition here. So I'm wetting my paper below and then going in and teasing the line just so that you could have a nice transition. Okay, picking up the paint because I want to keep the white of the paper there. Coming in with my darker carmine and drawing in the darker parts that I see. With a damp brush, I'm going to draw in the line I see for the white part of the watermelon, like in the reference photo. We're going to work on the rind. I am wetting the area. Picking up my leaf green. That first one you can see part of the rind, and so that area is going to be a little bit thicker with the leaf green. So wetting first and then dropping in the green, it's going to have a nice soft transition into that white area. Same thing with the last one. Okay, so you're going to let your paper dry after you do this part. Now I'm coming in wet on dry with the sap green, drawing in the darker line of the rind, and with a wet brush going over, teasing out that edge like we did before. There are darker areas in the rind, so for a little bit of realism, I'm drawing in those little dots that I see. Okay. Using your brush, drawing in that line, the darker line with the sap green. I'm going to talk about the brush I'm using is a 6 round, and it has a very, very fine point. But if your brush does not have a fine point, you probably will have to use a smaller detail brush. So I've just wet that edge, and it's the same thing with this last one, except for the last one, there's a lot more of the rind showing. So starting off the same way, draw the line, tease out the color so it's a nice softer edge. But then coming underneath, I'm grabbing some of that wet paint and drawing in the rest of the rind. Okay, and then with the sap green, I'm drawing in all those marks that I see in the reference photo. All right, so I know this watermelon photo does not have seeds, but I would like to make seeds. So I'm mixing my red and my green together to get a very neutral color. I could even pick up some of the indigo in order to darken everything up a little bit. So I have a very natural, kind of my own black that I've made. And just sporadically, wherever I think it would look nice, I'm just adding in some seeds. So kind of where my darker areas are, I am adding in the seeds there. Almost where you have your brush strokes seems to be a nice area to add the seeds, so decided to add them there on that second one. Again, where I had that little dark area, V-like area, I'm adding a seed. So, you know, just kind of look at how your watermelon looks and where the seeds would look kind of neat, and just add them in. So I've picked up some more sap no, leaf green, I'm sorry, and went over that rind again. Now we're going to add in the shadows, and we're going to do it wet on wet. So wetting the area first with a damp, clean brush. Then you're going to drop in that natural shadow color that we made for the seeds by mixing your red and green together. Red and green are opposite on the color wheel, and they will make a very shadowy, dark, blackish color that is a lot more pretty and more realistic looking than using straight black paint. Okay, dropping in the shadow color again for this middle one. You know, I'm left-handed and I have such a hard time remembering to work from the right side of my work to the left, and it would be much better if I did that. So as you can see in the reference photo, that last shadow is on the bottom. Light is coming from the left and going over to the right. So to make it consistent, I decided to put my shadow on the right side of the fruit like the other two. All right, so this would be perfect as a one-layer painting. It's very pretty. Sign your work and you could be done. But if you want more vibrancy, stay tuned for the second part. So on the second layer, I'm re-wetting the whole thing, okay? We're gonna re-wet, and then just with the straight quinacridone scarlet, I am adding in the color. So kind of keeping with the reference photo, I'll add in a little more vibrancy in those darker areas. I'm not going with the carmine at all. I want the vibrancy. I want it to really pop from the page. So I'm just sticking straight with the quinacridone scarlet, which is a perfect fleshy, pinkish, peachy color that's perfect for watermelons. So wetting the whole thing for this second one, keeping in mind that that right-hand side has a lot of vibrancy, going over again. Now, as you can see, I'm losing those light lines that I've made before. So I'm going to have to end up doing those controlled blooms again in order to get that back. Last piece of watermelon, adding in my quinacridone scarlet. Now, as you know, watercolor dries quickly, so to get those lighter lines in, I'm trying to work quickly, because while it's wet is when I need to put those lines back in. Okay, so here we go. Damp brush. I'm using my finger to stabilize my hand so that I could draw with a very solid hand and I'm not shaky. So that's a little tip there. Keep your pinky down and then you just use your paintbrush like you're drawing. All right, so now once that dries, I want the flesh part on that right side to be a little bit more white. So to take back the white of the paper, I'm using like a scrubbing brush, and I'm scrubbing out some of that pink color. Now, I caution you to do this gently. I'm using Arches, which is professional watercolor. You see that little speck I just picked up there? That's actually the paper. I am picking up parts of the paper have actually come off. So you have to use artist's grade paper to do really heavy scrubbing like I did. Otherwise you'll put a hole in your paper, but having that little bit of layer come off is okay. It looks great. Some paper won't tolerate that, so you might have to use a less harsh brush. So now I am coming back in and darkening up my seeds. That's the last thing to do here. So there is a huge difference, as you see, from doing just the one layer or going ahead and adding a second layer. It's just so much brighter, and I think it's a lot more attractive looking. So that is it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial today. I'm gonna go eat a watermelon now, and I'll see you next week.